Breaking news has sent shockwaves through the gospel community as one of the most respected and beloved figures, Bishop Marvin Winans, finally breaks his silence amid swirling, relentless rumors about his health. Rumors that have traveled from pew to pew, from choir stands to living rooms, leaving fans anxious, concerned, and desperate for the truth. For weeks, whispers had gained momentum, turning into loud speculation as supporters noticed a shift in his public appearances, canceled engagements, shorter sermons, quieter social media posts, and a reflective tone that felt unfamiliar for a man whose voice once roared with spiritual authority. And these subtle changes ignited a storm of worry unlike anything the gospel world had seen in years. Behind the scenes, those closest to him, family members, longtime friends, trusted colleagues, watched the rising tension as fans practically begged for answers, urging Bishop Winans to step out publicly and address the growing unease. For a man known for his strength, composure, and unwavering presence, the idea of acknowledging personal struggle was a battle in itself. He had spent decades being the rock, the steady hand, the spiritual anchor for millions across the world, and the thought of revealing vulnerability went against everything he had been conditioned to embody. But as the rumors grew louder, as social media dissected every gesture, every canceled event, every moment of quietness, the narrative began spiraling into something he could no longer ignore. People wondered whether his health was declining, whether he was hiding something serious, whether the gospel community was preparing to lose yet another icon. Questions that spread like wildfire through churches, online forums, prayer groups, and fan circles. Tension reached its peak when Bishop Winans, with the weight of the world on his shoulders, finally stood before his followers and delivered a message that would change everything. With a calm yet emotionally resonant voice, he addressed the rumors head-on, acknowledging that yes, there had been challenges, yes, there had been moments of weakness, yes, there were things he had been quietly navigating behind closed doors, but he spoke not as a celebrity, not as a bishop sitting above the congregation, but as a human being grappling with the very vulnerability that he had spent years helping others confront. His honesty carried a kind of power rarely seen, a humility that pierced through every fear, every concern, every rumor that had been circulating online. He reassured fans that while the journey had not been easy, he remained committed to his ministry, his calling, and the community that had supported him for decades. Behind the scenes, insiders shared unseen details, late-night medical routines, emotional conversations with family, moments where he pushed through pain to fulfill his duties, and nights where exhaustion quietly replaced the powerful presence people were used to seeing on stage. They explained that this revelation was not meant to draw sympathy, but to bring transparency, to remind the world that even giants bleed, even icons face storms, even leaders have moments where the weight becomes too heavy to carry alone. And the reaction was instant. Social media erupted with an outpouring of love, prayers, messages of encouragement, heartfelt reflections from fans who had grown up with his music, his ministry, and his influence shaping their faith. The gospel community united in a rare moment of collective compassion, realizing that the man they admired was fighting a battle he had tried to carry silently. But even as his words brought clarity, they also opened new doors of curiosity. What exactly had contributed to these health concerns? How long had he been struggling privately? What sacrifices had he made that no one knew about? And how would this affect his future? Not just as a musical icon, but as a pastor, a leader, a father, a man? Insiders hinted that the story ran much deeper than what was shared publicly, involving years of sleepless nights, emotional strain, and the heavy burden of spiritual responsibility. They described long seasons where he pushed through physical discomfort to minister to others, moments where he placed the needs of his congregation above his own well-being, and times when the emotional toll of carrying a global ministry left him drained in ways most people could never imagine. His revelation was more than an update. It was a wake-up call, a reminder that beneath the polished image, beneath the music, beneath the fame, there lived a human being who had quietly endured battles that most would crumble under. It challenged the gospel community to rethink its expectations of leaders, to acknowledge the cost of greatness, and to recognize that vulnerability is not weakness but courage in its purest form. And as Bishop Winans' words echoed across social media, across churches, across homes, the narrative shifted from fear to admiration, from gossip to gratitude, from speculation to reflection. Because in that moment, he didn't just reveal the truth, he revealed his humanity, and in doing so, he gave the world a deeper understanding of what it truly means to lead with faith. His story continues to unfold, with insiders hinting that the full journey includes sacrifices, emotional trials, and silent battles that have shaped him in ways the public has never known. And while the world waits for the next chapter, one truth remains clear: this moment, This raw, honest confession will forever stand as one of the most powerful and unforgettable turning points in modern gospel history. What unfolded behind the scenes after Bishop Marvin Winans' revelation was something far deeper than what fans initially imagined, because his honesty didn't simply confirm that he had been navigating health challenges. It exposed the emotional, spiritual, and psychological burden of leadership that so many never truly see, shining a light on the unseen labor and the hidden toll carried by a man who has spent decades uplifting others while quietly fighting storms of his own. And as this truth surfaced, it revealed not only the vulnerability of a beloved gospel icon, but also the strength that has kept him moving forward through seasons of pressure, expectation, and personal struggle. To understand why Bishop Winans' revelation stunned the gospel world, you have to look past the headlines and examine the years of weight he carried privately. For decades, he has been more than a singer or pastor. He has been a mentor, a spiritual anchor, a voice that comforted broken hearts, inspired weary souls, and guided generations through worship and ministry, all while pouring out strength that many assumed he possessed endlessly. But insiders now reveal the truth that beneath the polished public image existed long stretches of days filled with responsibilities that would exhaust even the strongest leaders, hours of ministry, performances, counseling, meetings, family duties, and the continuous pressure of being the face of a spiritual empire that millions depended on. They describe nights where he returned home physically drained, moments where the emotional weight of leadership pressed on him harder than fans could ever imagine, and mornings where he had to push himself to show up, smile, and deliver inspiration even when his own body begged him to stop and rest. This balancing act between public strength and private struggle grew heavier over time, especially as health concerns, though never fully disclosed, began requiring more attention, more checkups, more self-awareness, all while the demands of ministry continued to pile up. Insiders say that family and close friends repeatedly encouraged him to slow down, to take a step back, to prioritize his well-being, but the call to serve, the responsibility he felt toward his community, and the devotion he carried for his ministry often outweighed his personal needs. And then came the rumors. As fans began noticing changes in his energy, missed appearances, shorter messages, and quieter moments, social media exploded with speculation, posts questioning whether something was wrong, comments analyzing every photo and video, gossip threads spreading assumptions that grew louder and more intense with every passing day. The private struggle of one man suddenly became public curiosity, and Bishop Winans found himself caught between wanting to protect his privacy and knowing that complete silence was only fueling more fear and misunderstanding. Even as he wrestled with the choice of speaking publicly, the emotional stress increased because these rumors weren't simply about his health. They threatened the public perception of the ministry he had worked his entire life to build, and for someone whose leadership rested on trust, this became an additional burden heavier than anyone ever knew. But through all of this, his faith remained steadfast. Those close to him reveal powerful moments of prayer, reflection, journaling, and quiet conversations where he leaned into God for guidance, clarity, and courage. These moments, away from the cameras, away from the cheering crowds, became the foundation of the resilience that pushed him to finally confront the rumors head-on. When Bishop Winans finally spoke publicly, his message carried the weight of all these unseen battles, delivered not with fear, but with a calm transparency that left the gospel world breathless. He acknowledged the concerns, spoke openly about his challenges, and reassured his community that although he had been facing difficult moments, he remained committed to his calling, to his purpose, and to the people who have supported him throughout his journey. His voice, strong yet vulnerable, revealed a side of him the public had rarely witnessed, and in that moment, he turned what could have been a moment of weakness into a profound declaration of faith, humility, and strength. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands flooded social media with prayers, love, encouragement, and stories of how Bishop Winans had shaped their spiritual journeys. Many expressed heartbreak at the idea of him suffering silently, while others celebrated his bravery in addressing the rumors with honesty and grace. But with transparency came scrutiny. Some commentators questioned the timing, others speculated about the seriousness of the health concerns, and still others created narratives that stretched far beyond what Bishop Winans had actually said. Every post he made afterward was analyzed, every interview clip dissected, every public appearance scrutinized as people searched for hidden signs or deeper meaning. Meanwhile, gospel leaders, fellow artists, and spiritual mentors publicly shared their support while also using the moment to start conversations about the emotional toll of ministry, discussing burnout, leadership fatigue, and the pressure of living under constant public expectation. These dialogues became bigger than Bishop Winans himself. They became reflections on the human cost of being a leader in the spotlight. And just when it seemed the story had reached its climax, an unexpected twist emerged, a wave of commentary from media outlets, public personalities, and even peers that amplified the situation in ways no one anticipated, pushing the conversation far beyond simple concern and turning it into a headline-making moment that captured the entire gospel world. What began as whispers of worry had transformed into a profound narrative about transparency, faith, vulnerability, and the unseen struggles of a man who has given his life to serving others, leaving fans not only concerned but deeply moved, as they realized they were witnessing not just a health update, but a rare glimpse into the humanity behind a legend. Bishop Winans' honesty did more than calm rumors. It ignited a wave of reflection, healing, and conversation across the gospel world, sending ripples far beyond the walls of his church as people everywhere absorbed the weight of his vulnerability and found themselves confronted with their own hidden struggles. His decision to speak openly triggered an emotional chain reaction that no one could have predicted. Fans began sharing their own stories of health battles and emotional burdens. Fellow leaders opened up about the weight of ministry, and even those who had never followed his music found themselves unexpectedly moved by the courage he displayed. Media outlets erupted with coverage, blending compassion, analysis, and at times speculation, amplifying the story into headlines that captured the emotional complexity of a man who had spent his life inspiring millions while carrying private pressure few ever knew existed. Clips from his address went viral instantly, spreading across every major platform, each pause, breath, or tremble in his voice watched by millions searching for reassurance, meaning, and signs of what might come next, while fans dissected every second with a mixture of fear, hope, loyalty, and love. But beyond the noise of social media and the frenzy of headlines, the most profound impact was internal and deeply human. People were moved not just by what he said, but by the truth behind it, the reminder that even icons of faith can struggle, that leaders who appear unbreakable can face storms of their own, and that vulnerability, far from being a sign of weakness, can be a bridge that connects hearts, heals communities, and strengthens faith. Messages of support poured in from every continent, from gospel legends to new believers, from longtime followers to people who barely knew his name but felt touched by his sincerity. Hashtags trended, prayer campaigns began, and fans united in a rare moment of collective empathy that celebrated not only the legend he is, but the human being he revealed himself to be. Yet behind the scenes, something even more unexpected unfolded. Insider sources revealed that Bishop Winans' honesty sparked introspection among his closest circle and leadership team, prompting emotional conversations about transparency, burnout, and the toll of living under public expectation. For the first time, people around him felt compelled to examine their own roles, responsibilities, and unspoken battles. This added an entirely new layer to the story, showing that his revelation was not simply personal. It was transformative, catalyzing discussions both online and in private rooms about the hidden cost of leadership, the pressure placed on spiritual figures, and the profound importance of acknowledging one's limits before they become overwhelming. As the initial shock faded and the public sought deeper understanding, the true magnitude of his confession came into focus. This was never just a story about health rumors. It was a defining moment rooted in vulnerability, courage, and a willingness to confront scrutiny with grace. Those closest to him shared that in the days following his revelation, he spent long stretches in prayer and reflection, reevaluating the expectations he had placed on himself and the relentless pace he had kept for decades. They described quiet moments of confession, heartfelt conversations with family, and a renewed awareness of his humanity. Reminders that the mantle of leadership, though sacred, can also be heavy enough to break even the strongest shoulders without support. Meanwhile, the gospel community responded with overwhelming unity, reaffirming their love for him with testimonies, prayers, and tributes. Many recalling how his voice had lifted them during their darkest seasons, now they felt called to return that strength. What began as whispered concern evolved into a global celebration of resilience and transparency, reinforcing the bond between leader and community. But the revelation also reignited deeper conversations within churches everywhere about mental health, emotional labor, and the unrealistic expectations placed on pastors, urging leaders to consider how unspoken struggles shape ministry and reminding congregations that strength and vulnerability can and must coexist. Even outside the gospel sphere, cultural commentators and everyday viewers engaged in debates about courage, transparency, faith, and what it means for public figures to show humanity in a world that often demands perfection. Bishop Winans' honesty became more than a statement. It became a catalyst, a mirror, a lesson in resilience that resonated on a universal level. And in the quieter moments after the storm of reactions, Bishop Winans took time to reflect, to breathe, to realign himself with his calling, recognizing that even icons need rest, even leaders need support, and even the strongest voices must sometimes whisper their truth. In his message to the public, he clarified that facing challenges doesn't diminish purpose, rather, it deepens it. He reminded fans that faith does not exempt one from hardship, it guides you through it. His final sentiment echoed with the depth of a man who has lived, endured, and continued to rise, that behind every legacy, behind every song, behind every sermon, and every accolade, stands a real person navigating real struggles with courage, grace, and hope. And that is why the story of his revelation will live far beyond the rumors. It will be remembered for the honesty that broke walls, the strength that inspired millions, and the powerful reminder that no matter how bright the spotlight, the heart behind it still beats with human fragility and divine purpose.